Hey there, this is Natalie, and I wanted to thank you for checking out To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. I am very excited because recently I celebrated the podcast's first birthday. And what better way to celebrate than to try and build up this community of tolerators and gather them all in one space? To do that, I launched our Patreon where you can make a monthly contribution to the podcast and get some amazing benefits like early access to episodes, ad-free episodes, some virtual hangout time with me and other tolerators, and other ways to really allow us to get to know one another. Any support that you can give to the podcast will be so helpful in the second year to help me elevate the content and grow our community. There is a link in the show notes that contains all the information you need to help the podcast grow. I love and appreciate every one of you. Happy birthday, Team Tolerator. Tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, the show where my guests and I chat about living in a world that chooses not to support us because we're still holding on ideals from the past before women could easily be single and independent from the men in their lives. Today, we get to welcome back Caitlin Grant from Plug It Up. Her and I are going to have a cathartic bitch session about how we're single and we would be loving it if everyone could get on board on being affordable for single people. Thank you for coming back, Caitlin.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here. I've enjoyed watching your show grow and watching it on Fireside, and just it's good to be here. Things have changed so much since the first time, and in the best ways.
In the best of ways. I know it doesn't feel like that long ago that you were here, and it's because we talk every day, but then I'm like, wow, it literally has almost, you were our second guest, or maybe JD and Ghost were our second guest. You were an early guest in season 1. So you're right, things have changed, but you know what hasn't changed? Misogyny and the patriarchy.
It sure hasn't. It sure hasn't.
And late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
All right, so I know that a lot of our topic points revolve around money and our living situation. Give me an idea, when was the last time you lived with someone and got to split bills?
Yeah, the last time I lived with someone, I lived with a partner, and we had been dating. We dated for about 4 years, and we lived together downtown, and we split our rent 50-50, and that was in 2019. And in 2019, we split and went our separate ways. So I moved to the suburbs, and I am paying a whole lot in rent now just by myself. So yeah, it's been a big shift. There, you and I both live alone, and there are so many pros to that, but the cost is not one of them.
Because Elizabeth and I's episode of 90s Protagonist just came out yesterday, I'm like, do I need to rewatch One Tree Hill? There's no one to tell me not to because I live by myself.
Yeah.
I've never lived with a partner, thank goodness. Oh, could you imagine a man touching my altar and my crystals? Because I really can't.
Is it Whoopi Goldberg that was like, why would I want a man in my house?
Why? Yeah. Have you ever met a man? Have you ever seen what men think is acceptable decor?
How they live. Yeah, the decor thing is huge for me. Being able to decorate the way I want it just makes a huge difference.
Have you ever been trapped on a quote unquote date, but you're watching a sport on TV? That's but about 8 years ago, maybe 9, I was living with a woman who I taught with, who had an extra bedroom in her home. Like she had a full-fledged house. And she charged me about $200 twice a month. So it was $400 total, but I got to split it however I needed to split it. And then I paid for my own groceries. But when it came to like cable, internet, utilities, I was living large, but I eventually had to move out of her house because her partner was coming in. And we just talked about how unfortunate it is to live with men. And I moved there and I was working at the Catholic school that pays you no money. There's no money. So
that's like a misconception a lot of people have, because teachers, I was a teacher and teachers make no money, period. But they're like, oh, if you work at a private school, it must be better money because private schools cost more to go to, or they cost, period. But no, they pay less because the benefit is that your kids, if you have them, can go there for free or at a reduced rate, which again does not benefit people like you and me.
No. I got paid horrendous money and I ended up living in this apartment complex, which was probably dangerous. But I'm one of those people where it's like, did I notice that it was dangerous, or was I just paying attention to what was happening with me? And so I fully slept through, like took a nap through someone getting shot in the apartment building next to mine. And a neighbor woke me up to be like, did you realize that like cops and everything? I was like, no, I did not. Did not realize. And I lived in
better for it.
Yeah.
To have slept through it, I mean.
And I lived in basically a hockey player dorm. So like once a year, my apartment building would take all of the empty apartments and rent them out to our semi-professional hockey team. So 7-ish months, I don't know, 6 months out of the year, I would literally be living in a hockey dorm, and they would party all the time. And if I had like walked in with a bunch of groceries or something and had not locked my door, like a hockey player would just arrive and I'd be making tacos and he'd be like, oh, and he'd look around at my nicely decorated place and he'd go, I can't imagine that your place is part of the party. The girls that we meet don't make dinner. And I'm like, no, you're right. Just usher yourself along.
Keep them moving, please.
One time, one of their dogs got into my apartment. That was actually fine. I was like, well, you know, at least it's a dog.
Yeah. Better than the alternative. Yeah.
But rent was cheap at that apartment too. Like I remember that I didn't have to take on that much extra in rent, but I did have to start paying utilities and cable and things like that. And fuck cable.
I've foregone it. I pay for internet. And I collect too much for that too. Yeah. But I also pay for Netflix, Hulu, Prime, Shudder. I do use my brother's Peacock and my aunt's Disney Plus, but like between all the subscriptions that I've got, I'm paying quite a bit.
Through people insisting that I watch things and have access to the things that they would like me to watch, I have everything for free but Amazon Prime and Showtime.
There you go.
I've literally just cobbled together a way to have everyone's logins for the different apps.
We have to. I mean, it's funny, like my brother and I feel like are the supporters of those in our family, and then our parents have traditional cable, which like I can use their HBO Max login, like, you know, it's a whole thing. This is a very collaborative process for most people.
But when it comes to, I mean, you brought a great point up, and that's why we ended up doing this episode where you said that rent was based on still at least a family of two. Like there's no like, oh, are you a single person? Why don't you live in this room for like $150 a month? There used to be like women who were unwed used to just live in boarding houses. Style.
Yeah.
In lady dorms with curfews and rules. And I almost want to be like, can we go back to that? Like, I don't know.
Well, and it's hard. Like I'm not a person who wants a roommate. So I can already hear sort of the, I guess, defense of this. It's like, oh, you could always get a roommate. And it's like, no, I'm a person who is single, but that doesn't mean I want to have a roommate indefinitely. I'm an adult person who is independent, and I happen to not be coupled. And we talked about it with the apartments, but I also am looking to buy a house. And we all know that the market right now is nuts for a lot of reasons, but it's especially hard for first-time home buyers who are individuals and not a part of a couple, because it's just my money at that point. You know, I don't have someone else's finances, savings, income to fall back on. And most homes Well, the housing market in general, apartments, mortgages, whatever, are designed for dual income for the most part. And if not,
So I own my condo, and with that brings all of its new fun intricacies because you think I can afford my mortgage and I can afford utilities and internet and some sort of life that Penelope and I can cobble together. But then there are like the little things that happen to a home that then cost an outrageous amount of money to fix.
Yep.
And that all falls on you, which again, those defensive people will say is my fault. Get married or rent out your loft. I don't know. But I feel like we're always sold a bum deal in late stage capitalism that all of this is doable, but it's only doable on their terms.
It's another scenario of people, but especially women, expected to do it all. Mm-hmm. And I also think about that when it comes to the maintenance of a household. So, if the 40-hour work week was designed when one half of the sort of partnership was staying home to manage the household and kids if they were present. So if you feel like you can't get everything done, you can't, because your work week, if you're working full time, is not designed for you to have time to manage a household. And it's just another way that I'm like, God, I'm not getting enough done. I'm not living up. I can't do it all because capitalism won't let me.
The first thing I did with my first stimulus check when I was unemployed and needed to just be like cooler about money was I realized when you sit in your home when you're on house arrest and you have to be here, you realize all of the things that you just naturally let slip. Because living on my own, I do not keep up with my home because I work full time and I live a very vibrant life. So I realized that Penelope sheds like a full ass 4 kittens every week, and it just exists in my home. So I bought a robot vacuum
nice.
to help me because I can't afford a maid.
Yeah. I want one of those so bad.
Oh, no, you need vacuum. To invest in it.
But it's funny that you mentioned that, though. I was having lunch with a couple of other single friends, actually. One is a single dude who lives in DC. One is another single woman who lives in Richmond. And he was like, we were having this conversation about, when you're single and you just have one person trying to work and maintain your household and it doesn't work. He was like, I outsource. He was like, I have the means to hire help to clean, so I do it. And I was like, yeah, lean into that if you have that ability. Oh, yeah. Not all of us do, but I'm glad that he's recognizing it and saying, like, I don't have shame in the fact that I'm going to need help with this.
No. And I am exactly in the same boat, which is why when I got this desk that I'm sitting at, I immediately paid one of those people on like a handy app or something to build it because I didn't want to do it. And I knew that my new fun desk would arrive and I would allow it to sit in a box for months. And my undiagnosed brain would allow me to avoid it and live around it and stack things on top of the unopened box. So when I purchased it, I just went, yep, we're going to add on this little add-on that says that someone will arrive to my house and an elf will make my desk and put it exactly where I want it.
Worth it.
I will say, however, that being single gives me almost a scarcity complex about all of my resources because it's all on me. So I constantly feel like I don't have money, whether or not it's true, for luxuries like vacations. Yeah. I truly can't wrap my head. My friend does an amazing job of going on solo vacations all the time. I cannot wrap my head around not like splitting Airbnb costs or having someone else be responsible for booking my plane ticket or I can't wrap my head around traveling by myself.
I travel a lot for work by myself, but the expense for me is where I get caught up in terms of personal travel for pleasure. I lost a job during the pandemic and I was unemployed for a little while and it was horrifying. Yeah. I'd like to think that I make decent money. And I do recognize that rent is too expensive for everyone. The cost of living is too expensive for everyone. But I also, because of the scarcity sort of idea, I'm too afraid to spend money on stuff like that because I don't have a second, another person's income to fall back on for support. I have my savings, but they're for emergencies,
Right. Well, and then, so fun fact about my unemployment stint, because I have only worked for the church, the school district, or a nonprofit, I was making way more on unemployment than I was at my current job or any other past job that I've had. And so you finally feel like you built a nest egg. And now there's a thought in my brain that happens every time I'm driving into my place of work that I don't want to be at. And I could work fully from home and they just won't let me. And it's like, you motherfuckers, if something happens to this car, I'm done.
I'm fucked. Yeah.
I'm fucked. If I drive this car into the ground and something happens to it or someone T-bones me or any of it, and it's a new anxiety thanks to the pandemic, I like have awful driving anxiety, but I'm also so worried that for whatever reason, the car would be the one thing that makes me broke.
I mean, it's not an unreasonable fear. Most people in the US are one broken down car, one medical emergency, whatever, away from poverty or bankruptcy even. I mean, it's pretty dire. And it's not typically from a lack of savings or a lack of money management. It's just that everything costs a lot. And when you're single, that burden falls to you specifically.
Mm-hmm. Because what happened to my lovely unemployment nest egg is once I got my shitty job, my toilet decided to flood above my fridge and throw multiple tantrums. Like we thought we had it fixed, and then it threw another tantrum. And then I was like, why? Why would this happen to me? And then, like you said, that all falls onto one person. And while I know that there are people in my life who are able to help me out, I would rather stand in front of a train than let that happen.
Yeah.
I would just rather. Also, there's this idea in America where it's like, if you're not making enough money to be happy with one job, why not have three?
The hustle culture, the grind culture, which is just horrible. I mean, like we don't live to work. We shouldn't, at least. And the fact that that's the solution, it's like, oh, no. No, that's not going to be. People should pay a living wage, and I should get compensated fairly for my work.
Right. As we know, in our current economic climate, gas is off the charts. Everything at the grocery store, I feel like, has tripled in price.
Yeah, it's really expensive.
Literally everything. We're lucky if we can find toilet paper, and then we're lucky if that toilet paper isn't like $15. I don't know.
I heard another paper product shortage is coming, so
right.
Buckle up.
And I told my employer, plus, like, we have a bunch of stuff sitting in trucks because we killed our working class. We allowed our working class to die during the pandemic. So I told my employer one time, I was like, hey, listen, if everything's going to triple in price, so is my labor. You do not pay me enough. And you do not pay me enough for this stress. You do not pay me enough to believe that you can change Tuesday and what my Tuesday looks like on a Monday and expect me to snap too because you said a thing.
Yeah. No.
Because I'm not even making enough money to put the gas in my car you're requiring to get me here.
Right.
It's and like you've been pointing out, it is a problem that a lot of people are experiencing right now, and it is not a single people or a partnered people problem. It is a late stage capitalism problem. And it's the fact that the people who are in charge, the patriarchy, have that, well, when I was a youth, you could go to college for $20 a month, and I just worked a library job 10 hours a week to pay for my college. And have you ever heard of working?
Yeah.
Eat another slice of avocado toast.
Yeah, it's fucked. I saw this comparison of, someone was like, "Oh yeah, when I was growing up the minimum wage was that too. It sucks." And it's like, "No, but like with inflation, like you don't understand how much less we're making now than you were." And like I said, I feel comfortable in my role, but that doesn't mean that capitalism hasn't fucked all of us.
Right. So my friend actually did the math because he could. And he was given, good for him. He figured it out. He got a raise at work, and they did it to keep him there and keep him satisfied. So he stopped looking for other jobs. Then he took another meeting and he was like, "Hey, I just need you to know, with the raise that you just gave me plus inflation, I took a 9% pay decrease."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people are like, if you don't, I forget what the percentage was, because I guess it's going to vary, but I think it was somewhere in like 15, like up to 15%. Like if you're not making 15% more year over year, you are making less money.
Right.
Net.
There's another thing that you were good enough to bring up, and it's my ever present anxiety of being single, because because I know what happens when I'm sick or depressed and can't take care of myself, and I still have to do it or I starve.
Or I blow all my money on DoorDash.
Or I blow all my money on DoorDash. I once dated a man and I had the flu and all I wanted was a smoothie. When I get the flu, I can literally not eat anything but like a smoothie to give me enough calories to get through the day. And it was going to be $22 on DoorDash. And I was like, that's a lot for a fucking smoothie. Mm-hmm. So I told him, I go, isn't that ridiculous? Like, I'm going to have to pay $22. And instead of offering to get me the goddamn smoothie and put it on my porch, he said, I mean, yeah, but if you're sick, you're sick. If you can't get to Tropical Cafe, you can't get to Tropical Cafe.
Oh, buddy. He didn't read the room.
A female friend asked me that day, have you eaten? And I said, no, because I cannot stand. And she worked until 9 o'clock that night and then went to our 24-hour grocery store, keyed into my house because a lot of my girlfriends have a key to my house, yelled up into my catatonic, like delusional state, it's just me, keep sleeping, pet Penelope, and left after 20 minutes. And I woke up the next day and she had bought me 7-Up and juice and soup and a bouquet of flowers and all of these things that she was like, if you can't stand up to heat up soup, like here's a thing that won't perish if you need it, but you can have it right there with you. And I was like, and that's great. She moved away. So she moved away. So now when I'm sick, I have people who would probably love me enough to go to the grocery store with me, but I would never ask them.
Yeah. No, and I've got girlfriends. It's always been girlfriends who would do that for me. And I do that for them too. And luckily I have family that lives here and they're fantastic and would certainly do that for me. Yeah. But it's different when you're single and you're in a city where you might not have family.
Right.
Hard.
And then another giant anxiety that I have besides the flu is my ever living thought in my head. And the reason why I did not go to doctors a lot in my adult life is as soon as a doctor tells me that I have cancer or something that is going to require long-term care, I'm fucked. I am fucked financially because now I can't work. I am fucked in the regards of who's going to drive me to all of these treatments. So now I have to pay an Uber and then I'm fucked because I'm just sick and I'm fucked. And I don't know if people, number one, I've watched people with partners get horrendously ill and still not feel supported. And I feel like that is bullshit. But I don't think that people realize that in our country, the most prosperous country in the world, if you get sick and if you struggle or if you need to be on short-term, long-term disability, family medical leave, any of it, you're fucked and you're basically not viewed as a person contributing to society. So it's to the pit with you.
I do have some long-term chronic illnesses that are incurable. I have Crohn's disease and rheumatoid arthritis, among others. And all of those can be debilitating in their own ways at different times. And if I didn't have my family here or good friends who are willing to help out, I would be in really sorry shape. I mean, it's already really hard. But when you're single and trying to make all that happen and you do need a ride, like I've had I will always rely on my mom to drive me to my colonoscopies now, because I had a significant other do it once and I was like, not again. No, not again. No. but if you don't have that support, like, what are you going to pay the Uber driver to stay for an hour? Because they can't leave.
Or hope that you can get 2 Ubers.
It's just, it's tough.
It's tough, and it just takes a lot of extra coordinating. It's like we exchange the extra coordinating that you have with having a child, and we instead have to put all of that extra coordinating into just convincing people that they care enough about us to help us out.
And a lot of times, fortunately, they do.
Yeah.
It's just hard when, there are some people who, if they didn't marry, wouldn't have that support, or if they didn't partner, rather, wouldn't have that support. And that's, kind of sometimes keeps them trapped in relationships that are not good for them, because where else are they going to go? Who else do they have to help? Especially if they're in a vulnerable situation, like they have a prolonged illness or any other kind of condition that requires support.
Yeah. Not only is it a money issue, but then there's the way that people who are used to the norm being, my God, you didn't get married in college. You didn't just find someone who wanted to spend the rest of their life with you there. And it's their attitudes. So how do people treat you for being a person who is, quote unquote, still single?
This is not the norm. We'll get into the norm in a second, but I was having lunch today at work, like a networking thing at work. And this woman was like, Kaylin, I wish you could talk to my son and teach him how to be single for a while, because he just jumps from woman to woman and, always wants someone to take care of him. And you're just so good about taking care of yourself. And I really appreciated her saying that. But it's also, I wanted to be like, it's a lot of fucking work. Yeah. It's not easy for all the reasons we've already talked about.
My older aunts and my great aunt also love to hero worship me. Like, it's either one or the two extremes. You're either a hero, and it's almost like, I don't want to call it patronizing, because my Aunt Donna is my favorite person in the entire world. But it's like when you show up to a family event and you've done it all on your own and you packed your own bag and you drove the car yourself, and your great aunt, who lived in a world where she couldn't own a credit card, is literally blown away that your little female brain could figure out all of the ways to do that. And it's like, you're just so brave. You're just so brave, family.
So independent, so strong. And a lot of times, I fucking am. It's not easy. But then other times I'm like, we can get into the way men benefit from couple culture later on. But to answer your question, I feel like I have a friend group that did get married later, those that are married, and it's more married than it used to be. It used to be that most of my friend group was pretty single. I'm 32 right now. I turned 33 this summer. And, luckily a lot of my friend group is still single, less so than before. So I didn't feel like the odd one out there. But generally, culturally speaking, yeah. I mean, I used to watch, do you remember the show 4 Weddings on TLC, where they would compare weddings? I love that show.
I loved everything on TLC.
Oh, it's terrible. It's so exploitative, but I loved watching all, or Say Yes to the Dress, which I also love. And the brides, I remember being 24, what the fuck, are you a child bride? That just seemed so young to me. But now I'm like, oh yeah, people are married at my age, and that's kind of the cultural norm. And I'm maybe the outlier now. Yeah. And I still sort of tussle with that dissonance.
So I'm 33. So by the time my mom was 33, she had almost been married for 10 years and had 2 kids that were almost 10, that were 7 or 8 years old. I recently went to a bridal shower, and I wrote very lovely advice. They did that cute little like get a card, write the bride some advice. I wrote lovely advice. It was very feminist. It was, I hope that every day of your marriage is a celebration of who you are as an individual.
Love that.
My young friends, because I have young single friends, just stared into the void and they were like, what do we write? I have no life experience. What do I put on this card? I don't have any life experience. And they're just struggling. So I went, someone should write down that forever is a long time. It's long. And they went, Natalie.
How unromantic. Or yeah.
Some of us believe in love. I love when I'm treated like the crone in my friend group. Some of us believe
somebody's got to do it.
And I went, hey, I go, I believe in love. And the only reason I believe in love and marriage is because I also believe in divorce. There's a paper that can get me out of it. There's a paper going in. There's a paper coming out.
If there was no out, I would never fucking get married.
No. And I told them, I go, you have to think about it logically. Think about it mathematically. I go, when marriage was an institution for the first time, people were living to maybe 35, to maybe 40. They were married for 15 years tops.
And it was an economic structure. It wasn't for love. Like,
right.
Marrying for love is relatively new.
It's very new. Also, people died. I go, now people live until 90. I go, you got to look at somebody for 50 to 60 years and you have to hope that you like every version of them. I go, I change into 7 different people every year. It's a lot of different iterations of me that someone has to get on board with.
Yeah. And, one thing that I feel like a lot of people don't think about that I've dealt with in relationships is that your body's change too. Like for me, I, have bouts of chronic illness that make it harder or easier for me to do certain things. And that's not insignificant to a partner sometimes, for better or worse. Usually, I mean, when I think about it, it makes me angry, but at the same time, it's something that is a reality that people have to contend with.
Well, a lot of my partners, and good on them, got to experience me before I was chemically regulated. So not only will your bodies change, but your brain chemicals might.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that person who immediately jumps to the negative, but sometimes I'm not in for that ride, depending on what your chemicals have changed your behaviors to be.
Right. Yeah. Or like think about all the women that over the last, we'll say, I don't know, 6-8 years have found that their husbands are gross Trump supporters, which not to diminish the role that especially white women have had in this.
Yeah.
But I there is a trend of women being like, holy shit, my husband believes some reprehensible things. And I didn't know until Trump and other people like him made it okay, quote unquote, to say out loud.
It happened to one of the bachelorettes. I don't think she officially said it, but I think that's why her like little partnered marriage like never took off and they never got married.
Well, better now than later.
So I told that story about the bridal shower to my mom, and I'm an adult child of divorce. My parents divorced when I was on the verge of my 22nd birthday, just right on the edge. And my mom said, she goes, you know what? That is good advice because I was 19 when I met your dad. And what the fuck did I know?
No one knows anything at that age.
Yeah. The fuck did I know? And I was like, keep it going, Mom. Keep it going.
Yeah. Well, your brain doesn't stop maturing until your late 20s. Like
exactly.
That's a really huge commitment to make when you're that young. Which isn't to say it can't work, but
they got to knock us up. So they got to marry us basically when we're children at 23.
Well, I did want to say something about the, you mentioned being at a bridal shower. I've been a bridesmaid for a lot of weddings, and I will say I love it. I love having the friends and family that I do, and it has been an honor. But I saw a thing on TikTok the other day that was about, single women in their 30s who have attended every bridal shower, every baby shower, every bachelorette party. And I mean, financially, that is a lot of expenses that you're putting into these milestones in these women's lives. And yet, I've had my own milestones. You've had your own milestones. They're not related to becoming a wife or a mother, but they're not celebrated the same. So it's like you have this incongruous dynamic where like I'm lauding, celebrating, and I'm so happy that they're celebrating these things, but I'm not celebrated for my things just because they're a little bit different.
I can barely get people to spend $50 to do what I want to do for my birthday. Like once a year, I would like to go to a show, go make fairy gardens in our little hippie town, go out dancing, maybe get like one time we spent a weekend in Indy because I wanted to go to the dueling piano bar. And it is like pulling teeth to convince people that because I was born and my birthday will come around once a year, that they should invest money into celebrating the fact that I'm still here.
And, it could be other things too. Like it could be the success of your show. It could be getting out of a toxic job, getting out of a bad relationship, getting into a good job. It's societally for women, the celebrations that we're given are becoming a bride or a wife rather, and then becoming a mom. And those things are worth celebrating in some circumstances. But for those of us that don't have those plans or that it just hasn't worked out for us yet, I mean, there've been quite a few people where I'm like, God damn, I've done a lot of celebrations for these people and I'm so happy to have done so. But, just because I haven't done X, Y, and Z things doesn't mean I haven't done A, B, and C.
Right. Hallmark doesn't really make an invitation for your podcast launch party.
They should. There is an audience. Some Etsy seller is going to clean up.
They should. And people should want to go to things like that. Another friend of mine who runs the Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous podcast, she asked her friends, she asked the internet, why it's so easy for people who know creative people to support celebrities and go to a movie or buy whatever Kim K is wearing or all of it. But when I am making a thing or producing a thing or have a button or a sticker or something that you can buy, there's an instant like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. And I told her, I go, well, for me, it's a money shame thing. I've been shamed about money for so long that I feel like if I go out on a limb and spend a bunch of money at your store, it's almost like I insulted you. Like I felt like you needed it or you couldn't be successful without me. I go, so it's a social anxiety thing. But I will say that is also kind of the norm where it's like you're shouting things that are exciting and are really fucking cool. I do have a male friend who every time I text him something about the podcast, he sends me back in all caps and exclamation points, attention for your podcast. Because when I started this bitch and no one was paying attention to it or complimenting me, I told him, I don't get it. I did a really fucking cool thing and not everyone does this really fucking cool thing. So I feel like this should be the year I get attention.
Yeah. No, and that feels perfectly valid.
So he does. Attention for the podcast.
It's good to have friends that recognize it. And, there are those friends and family members out there. And at the same time, there are friends and family members who are so conventional in the way that they think about lifetime milestones and successes that it is always going to be tied to those sort of more conventional roles and not to your hobby accomplishments. I mean, because, even they can say, it's like, I celebrate getting a promotion at work, like that they can process that, but anything that's not tied to capitalism or like conventional femininity, like wifehood and motherhood, forget it.
When my father came to visit me here in Ohio for the first time, and he came to my first drama club production that I had directed for the middle school, he was more blown away, not by my work, the fact that I had on the fly had my friend teach me how to build shit and choreograph shit and teach kids how to read lines and all of it. He was more blown away that people from the community loved me. He's like, Natalie. He goes, I never would have known. So it's like one of those things where I think, and not that this would even be conscious of him, but it's because I'm not partnered that must equate that I have lesser love in my life than my family members who are partnered.
Yeah. Or it becomes this thing like, oh, well, it's so nice you have that at least.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it's sort of like, oh, that's a nice substitute for until you find the love of your life or something like that, where it's like, well, what if I'm the love of my life? What if the life I'm building is the love of my life?
It might be my podcast and Penelope, and that's it.
I relate to that hard. I really do.
She's a great cat. I also, and I have had this argument with my father before, really late at night at a Gen Con. I had no sleep. There was a pull-out couch available. They wouldn't go to bed because when you are the asshat who has to sleep on the pull-out couch, your sleep schedule and your decompression relies on everyone else being on your schedule of your frayed needs. So I picked the fight because sometimes you do. And I screamed at my dad, the reason why you will provide this wonderful vacation for everyone and you will make sure that my sister and my brother-in-law have their own room and that you and your partner have their own room is because you are partnered. I go, but I am a second-class citizen in this home because I have no partner to speak of, and therefore I don't get any consideration.
Well, it sends a message, whether it's, whether he realizes or not, that like, oh, well, the priority is for the couples and the leftovers can sort it out amongst themselves and find a space to sleep.
And then this one, the one who we don't know what went wrong with her, but no one will partner up with her. She had the couch or the floor. Yeah. Sometimes it's the floor.
Yeah. That's brutal.
And I find it also not even like a tangible thing, like not having the room that everyone gets or the space or whatever. I also find it that there's this intangible way that my voice counts less because I have no one backing me up. Mm. So everyone else gets to side-eye their partner and get 2 votes. But me, I'm just expected to either roll with it or no one's backing me up to help me be all like, well, maybe we could want to do this, or like, hey, that's not a way we talk to someone, right? That's not a way. So there's no one experiencing the gaslighting or manipulation that happens when I visit my family sometimes. So then you are literally the one person who's interpreting that way. And we know that in this society, when you are the one person who's interpreting something that way, that means you're insane. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that means that you're being dramatic and that you could have calmed down, but instead you decided to stick up for yourself.
If only you'd had a partner there to mitigate your lunacy.
Right. If only I had a partner to have taken my hand and been like, do you need a Coca-Cola? A pill? Weed? Like, what do you need?
Oh God. It's and it's weird. I feel like that men seem to benefit more from couple culture than women do. And I wrote down the quote because I liked it so much. I'm going to read it. This is from a user, definitely not a dingo, on Reddit. When you're happy single, you have a baseline of happiness. You'll only accept a partner who makes you even happier. If society can convince you that being single is miserable, your baseline is much lower. And so you're more likely to accept someone whose behavior doesn't meet your basic standards. So that's, with the scarcity stuff. And therefore, a misogynistic society has an incentive to convince women that being single is bad, so that men are able to hate, so that men can still behave like garbage and be in a relationship. Huh. And I think that that's so true, because as a single woman with most of her shit together, not all of it, a lot of men are looking for me to make their lives right. And I'm not going to fucking do that.
I'm either intimidating or I'm going to be the best second mother they've ever had.
God damn it. Yeah. The worst. Yeah.
I'm either too talented and make too much money on my own, or I am literally the person who will soothe all of their wounds and
plan
do
their
their
life.
dishes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's a really important point to make, because I value my peace and I will protect my peace. And there are times, like I think I told you, I got back on dating apps here recently because I went to a game night that was so much fun. There was a lot of couples, and I was like, oh man, it would have been nice.
Yeah.
You know, you just have those moments where you do want a partner. And I'm realizing though that like I like the life I've built for myself, and I'm only going to let someone in when they can match my energy and be cool with the person I am and the life that I've built. I don't need to. A lot of the men that have approached me have been more of the sort of like, oh, you have your own apartment? Oh, sick. Like, oh, like sort of like, oh, no. This is not the dynamic that we're going to do here. I'm not going to be your mom. I'm not here to take care of you. There is the caretaking that happens between two people that love each other, but that's not what I'm talking about.
So a lot of men who approach me on dating apps, and honestly, all of the men that I've dated, have what I would call shiny object syndrome when it comes to me, because they see me and they see me out with my friends and they see me gather everyone around like I'm the fucking Pied Piper and we're all laughing and drinking and dancing, and I'm usually fucking center stage for that. And because I have this grandiose like myself behavior, they're like, look at her. Look at her. She like loves herself. Maybe she'd love me too.
She can take care of it.
Maybe I could love myself through her.
Yeah.
And then they enter a relationship with me, and sometimes it's 3 weeks, sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes it's a year and a half. Eventually they resent me. Eventually it is I don't know why you always have to be like this. I don't know why it's always got to be the life of the party. I don't understand why you're the woman who always has to say like, hey, that's not how we treat people, or like, hey, white people could do better, or like, so all of the things that they got to see from like almost behind a movie screen. It's like if you got to, oh my God, I was about to compare myself to J-Lo, but it's like if you got to compare J-Lo, like you got to like watch J-Lo on Marry Me and be like, I'd like to date that person. And then you dated J-Lo and her personality sucked. I don't believe her personality sucks. You need everyone
For the record.
to know that. Yeah. I need everyone to know that. And they just start demantling everything that I've believed is true about what they liked about me. Because now all of a sudden, everything that they told me that they liked about me is all of the things that are tearing down our relationship.
Yeah. And that comes from them putting you on a pedestal, which is also very toxic, and then, yeah, the things that they admired about you, like independence or like, an ability to connect with people, is suddenly the issue in the relationship. And that's fucked up.
Yes. There are many a times that I believe, and I say this aloud all the time, and one day it is going to offend someone and they're going to go, Natalie, we know that you think you have a point, but you're actually offensive. And I'm going to be like, oh, I will stop making this point out loud to all of my female friends. I truly believe that one or two things would happen if we Thanos snapped and the patriarchy and misogyny no longer existed. Like we were able to rewrite the timeline. I believe that more women would be queer and gay and having partners with the queer and gay community. Because there wouldn't be a lot of internalized shame and hatred for maybe wanting to have a relationship with a woman or a queer person or a non-binary person.
Yeah, the compulsive heterosexuality or the compulsive heterosexual pairings that a lot of us feel like we have to do because
all of the codes that I'm rewriting in my head.
Yeah.
Because my family subscribed to white Jesus. And then the other flip side of that coin could be men would be better partners because they'd have to be. Yeah. Because there would be no societal reason for us to just fucking deal with them.
Right. We wouldn't put up with the behavior that so many of us do.
So when it comes to like, well, why is it, do you think, that men make more money than women? Is it because they have babies and they have to take off more work? No, motherfucker. It's because if you make more money than I do, eventually it's a perk to marry you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
an incentive for me to chain myself to you and have you say things like, I didn't know that the kids had to have a project be done.
Yeah.
Because you're a passive member of my household.
Right. Exactly.
Or, I mean, any of it. I mean, to the extreme, when it was our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, it was they couldn't have credit cards without a husband.
They couldn't have a bank account, period. They couldn't have a checking account.
They couldn't own land.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a big deal. I think that's why the hero worship comes into play with the older generation when they see the way that you and I live, because they're like, I could have never.
Yeah, because truly they couldn't have.
Right. Even if they had wanted to.
Yeah.
They could have never. And men do benefit a lot from the fact that we have set up a society that makes you into a partner that is desirable without actually having to be desirable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the bar is below the earth.
Yeah.
so often for men. And I think about that Reddit post that I was talking about, and society really does make it seem like the worst thing a woman can be, besides fat. God forbid. I'm fat, so I'm saying that with a huge grain of salt. But besides being fat, the other worst thing that you could be is single. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have, I mean, so much of our media, like our game shows, our dating shows, even our game shows like Survivor have love story plot lines, because that's what we think we're supposed to pay attention to and care about. And not saying that those don't have to be, those can't be included, because they can, but not much of our media focuses on single people and their life outside of their relationship to another person.
Right. Usually you get one more season of your favorite sitcom after the big wedding happens.
Yeah. Or in the finale, somebody finally admits their love, which, like, I enjoy that. Right. I do. But at the same time, if someone's single, it's usually sad. Yeah. And, when you are sold this bill of like the worst thing you could be a single, you do start to be like, oh, fuck, I should probably get that sorted out. Right. Lower my standards, do something I don't want to do, and partner up, and then be miserable? No, thank you.
Have you ever talked to a boring man? But thought, I'm gonna get free dinner out of this, because I have.
Well, it's funny. Like I said, I felt lonely that night that I went to that game night, but at the same time, so many people I know that are coupled are fucking miserable and they don't know how to get out of it.
And I think that's the hardest pill to swallow as I get older, is as the single person in the group, you do get to be privy to all of the ways that your friends or loved ones' partners are bad partners.
Yeah. And the more you know, and the less the longer I go single too, and the more stable I feel, like, disregarding the economy, because that's its own thing, but the more stable I feel in myself and the life that I'm making for myself, the less I'm going to tolerate nonsense from a partner. So the standards get higher in terms of like, look, I like my life and I'm going to let you in. It's going to be because I want you here, not because I'm desperate to have you here.
I have gotten to the point in my life, and I said it today at work, and people told me that this will change, that some magical Easter bunny of a human will walk into my house and I'll never want them to leave. But I said it, I was like, I'm 33. I've lived on my own for 10 years now. It's gotten to the point where I will have dates and I will have lovers and I will have people who I have fun experiences with, but I don't think I will have a spouse, and I know that I will not have children. Mm-hmm. Because even if I wanted you in close proximity, it would be in the next duplex where there is still a doorbell between us.
Do the old Frida Kahlo, Diego Rivera thing and have separate houses connected by a courtyard or whatever.
The Big Love, where they all just shared a yard, and Bill Paxton just traveled from wife to wife, and it's like, hey, if he's with her, that's my night off. No Bill Paxton dick for me tonight.
It's funny. There is so much value in finding a connection to another person. And I think that's why we podcast, because we find connections to people. They're not romantic, but they are connections to other people. And that's meaningful in and of itself. And then, I'm happy for those that have found romantic connection that seems to last, but goddamn, a lot of it sure doesn't seem to. And I am happy that I don't have to fake my way through a situation that feels bad for me.
I love holding hands and cuddling and orgasming as much as the next person, but there's a lot that comes with that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm currently processing in counseling, and it came up during my EDMR, and I'm just like sobbing, because that's what you do when you're reliving all of your trauma.
EMDR will do that.
Oh shit. Is I said out loud, I don't want to have to hand my bullshit over to anyone, because they're going to hand me their bullshit right back. And why would I want it? Why would I want their bullshit? And it's a catch-22 with partnerships, because you're supposed to want their bullshit. I think that's
the way it's been packaged.
Yes.
That, this whole warts and all thing, which in a lot of ways, I would love for someone to love me like that. Mm-hmm. But I think we even romanticize that part of it and don't think that far ahead when, especially when people get married a little bit younger, thinking long-term about what that's going to look like.
I also think that you just have to love them through it rhetoric that women get sold when someone's abusive, when someone's fallen towards an addiction, when someone's chosen to make a hurtful choice about your relationship and marriage and stepped out on you or anything like that. And then we're just told, well, don't let that fail.
Yeah. That it's
just put a little effort towards it.
Yeah. Which is potentially very toxic. Yeah, you can recover from those things sometimes, but oftentimes you can't.
And that's fine too.
When I was right out of college, I was an interpreter for an organization that helped Latino women with breast and cervical cancer. And the rates at which women with chronic severe illness, like a cancer diagnosis, are left by their male partners it's huge. I mean, women stay when their husband typically gets sick, and men often leave. Yeah. And it's brutal to see. But the conditioning is, well, stick by him. You can make it work. Yeah. But men aren't given that same spiel.
Right. Because they get you deserve the world. And if that's a 22-year-old in a muscle car, good on you. Yeah. Good on you. Yeah. We have arrived at about the hour, if not a little bit over. So we're going to go ahead and do our takeaways and manifestations. So what's been your biggest takeaway as a woman in her 30s still living a single lifestyle?
I think especially after trying to hop on dating apps again is realizing that I do value the life that I've created for myself, and that when it is time to welcome a partner in, it'll be because I want them to share this life with me, not because I feel like I have to check that box, which sounds so obvious, but it's not until you've really lived it that you start to believe it.
Literally not fucking obvious, because we're not sold that story in media.
Right.
You're supposed to date the person who's literally an arm's length away from you.
Yeah.
I think my biggest takeaway I'm going to build on yours. Now that I have built this life that I'm comfortable with and that I'm in love with, and I am also in love with myself and my personality, despite what my brain likes to tell me at night, I have to be aware now that the work is on me and not my partners to find the partner that I want. I talk a lot about my number one fear of entering a new relationship being that I become a very passive partner and whatever they say goes. And that'll happen with these apps because you're like, I don't know. Can I be that picky? it's Tinder. Right. And the answer is yes, because I worked so hard to build this life and to like myself. Why wouldn't I work just as hard to find that person?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you hoping for single people currently, or men, or ourselves? What's your manifestation?
I would love to manifest a life where the housing market is more welcoming. I really, really want to buy. I would like to buy in the next few years, and I plan to do it single unless something drastic changes. But I would just manifest sort of the financial independence as a single person that, you know, I'm feeling. I hope that continues for me. I want other people to feel it too, and not be so burdened by the fact that a lot of costs are designed to be split, and we're just not doing that. So
we're not doing it anymore. So I think my manifestation is that there becomes more awareness of more and more people every day are choosing to not be partnered with a purpose. Like there is a purpose behind that choice. And our society and culture is slowly changing about parenthood and partnering up and marriage and all of that. So then I'm hoping that that starts to breed respect for people who are living singly and outside of the white picket fence, 2.5 kids and a minivan norm. Mm-hmm. Because when I think about all of these issues, I think that's what's lacking. There isn't a respect for women who are single. I meant to say single people first and then double it for the single women. But there's just no respect for single people.
Yeah.
It's an enigma.
To stop the sort of like, oh, I wonder why. It's like, there's no why. I'm making the life that I planned, and TBD on the partner part.
We're kind of treated like we're living on the outskirts of society, or that we're rebelling. Like, oh, you permanently single. It's like, no, I just literally haven't found a good person.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to necessarily cheer for my singledom. Right. You don't have to lament and pity my singledom. It just is what it is. You know, we just want to be able to live by, do the things that we need to do.
Go to the movie without being stared at.
I love going to movies alone. It's my favorite.
I love going to movies alone by myself. And I also like eating at restaurants by myself because I can read on my Kindle.
Mm-hmm. I will say, traveling a lot for work, I have gotten comfortable eating, solo. But at the same time, sometimes it's still sort of like you get to like, oh, and it's like, no, I'm okay. Like it's fine, actually.
And you're still getting tipped. So everything's going to be fine.
I tip great, actually. So.
All right, go ahead and plug all of the places that the listeners can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Plug It Up Pod, and wherever you get your podcasts, you can find Plug It Up. It's a horror movie podcast about the monstrous feminine. Natalie, you were on for The Wind here recently. So if you like things spooky and feminist, you can find me there, and we can talk horror movies. And
I would like to plug that instead of starting a pop culture podcast like I should have, I started a feminist counterculture podcast.
I think it's great.
Thank you. But if you are currently a showrunner of your own podcast and you go, hey, that lady's funny, she's got a point of view, please give me a reason to sit down and watch a movie, because I won't do it for my own pleasure. I will not do it. So that's my first plug. My second plug is to make sure that you're liking and subscribing and following us on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod. That way you can get to firesidechat.com/Natalie Katona, and you can start having fun with us on the live shows. The last one that I did, we wrote improv romance novels based off of people's Tinder profiles.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
It was pretty fun. Elizabeth and I are putting 90s male protagonists on trial on whether or not they're dateable.
Love it. Love.
Just a fun game that we all get to play. Caitlin, thank you so much for being here. I don't know if you saw it, but I used Elizabeth's post about her being a guest star on the podcast to also be like, I fell in love with these people.
Like, it made me very tender. Like, I loved it.
Literally, we're fine being single because I still fall deeply in love with people that I am meeting.
Yeah. Friend love is real.
And you are one of them.
Well, likewise.
Thank you. So remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything that you're tolerating, including the sideways glances that you will get because you're dancing on the dance floor all by yourself because you didn't need a +1 to this wedding. Smiles are for joy. Keep dancing.